I love history. Are you still with me? They go to Manila. Ever been to Manila? Filipino people are about this high. They're all short. Asians are short people. They all have black hair, unless they do something to it. They usually have brown eyes. Filipino people are really nice, and I love them very much. Some of my best friends are Filipinos. I can live in Manila myself and be happy. They actually do what the preacher says, kind of like you. I like you too. I said, I can live in this country and die here, and you can bury me next to a tree, and I'd be happy. He goes there to build God a big church. But there's been no Protestant breakthrough in that nation. It's owned by the Catholic and demon power. That's the history of the Philippines until 1950. A young prostitute, about 17 years old, had been picked up on the streets of Manila for selling herself as a prostitute. And they put her in Bilibid prison. That first night that she was in the prison cell, she said, through the little window that was in the cell, a dark cloud, like a misty cloud, came through the window, onto the floor, and came toward her bed, and came up on the bed and got on her and began to bite her all over her body. Now, Americans don't believe that, but Africans do. Americans are so smart, they're stupid. Don't ever be that smart. Always keep reality as a part of your consciousness. And when it would bite her, it would draw blood. It'd have saliva on her. She would scream, ah, and pull at the dark. Try to push it off of her. It'd bite her on the chest, on her back, her buttocks, her legs, on her neck, her face. So the head of the prison called for the doctor, thinking it was medical. That's her there. Sumrall's praying for her. Let's leave the picture up there. And she curses the doctor. And 3 days later, she dies. That scared the Filipino warden. He called for the Catholic priest, and he came with the crucifix and the holy water and all the smoke and all the doodads. And that thing in here rose up and with foul language cursed him, and he died a few days later. Now everybody's scared. It's in the newspaper. The devil's killing people. And it's in the prison. And the mayor of Manila hears it. And he asked the radio station that dominated Manila at that time, because they recorded the girl screaming when she was being bitten. And the mayor asked the news people, put this on and ask, is there anybody that can help us with her? Sumrall, if you know his personality, is home working on his sermon for Sunday for his 100 people who came because they had to, not because they wanted to. Because he fed them and did something for them. They came because they got something. And God taps him on the shoulder. Go take care of that. He said, no. You got to know him. No, I'm not going to do that. You sent me from South Bend to Manila to build you a church, and that's what I'm doing. Let somebody else take care of that. He goes back to work on his sermon. God taps him a second time. Go take care of that. He's now, God, I already told you, get somebody else. I got to build you this church. And it's not easy, because I'm not a Catholic and I'm not even a Methodist. I'm a Pentecostal, and we're the weirdest people in Christianity by the public view. And you told me to come here. I left a good church in America to take care of these Filipino people who don't even want to come to church. Goes back and work on his sermon again. And God taps him a third time. Says, go take care of that. He goes, God. And then God goes, I have nobody else that knows how to deal with this but you. Oh, he broke. He said, I'm so sorry. He said, I thought there were others that could do that. He goes, it's a demon power, and I thought somebody else. I said, I'm so sorry. Sometimes you are the only one God has at that spot, at that time, that knows what to do. Sometimes your church is the only one that'll do that thing in that city. He says he's sorry. He gets dressed the next morning. They're like Africa. You dress in suits and ties even if you sweat to death. He puts his 1950 suit on and heads down to the city place where the mayor, the government is. And they make him wait to the end of the day. Finally, the mayor says, bring that guy in, the preacher in. Sumrall walks into the office and the mayor goes, are you Reverend Sumrall? He goes, yes, I'm that man. He goes, you're American. Yes? He says, no, sir, I'm glad that you want to help us, but I'm concerned. Everybody that goes in that cell with her dies. Now, we survived the warden dying or the medical dying. We survived the priest dying. But if I have an American die, I got an international problem. That's back when Americans meant something. And Trump's helping us now get that back, but it's been decades ago that you could just treat Americans how you want to. Thank God for blunt Trump. I voted for him and I'll do it again, and you should too. Amen. Notice how I got no claps? God gave us the most unusual man to do the things that we need done. A rich, rude New Yorker has become the president of the United States of America. That's called a Bible miracle. And there's no way that man should have won, and Jezebel is still mad that she lost. The principality thought they had my country and gonna kill it, and God sent us a deliverer. Yes. Hallelujah. We want to be like Kenya. We wanted the government and the church to get along together and quit fighting. You got something beautiful here going on. He says, sir, I can't have you die. He goes, Mayor, I don't die easy. Yes. I love authority. How do you die? Are you easy to knock out and knock off? Can sickness remove you? Can money troubles destroy you? Can public opinion remove you? How do you die? I don't die easy. He said, well, since you don't die easy, you can go. He goes into the cell the next day. And when he walks into the cell, that demon power rears up and curses him for a long period of time with the most foul language. He goes into the battle. Come out of her in Jesus' name. And she's fuming with the foul language of darkness. When he got tired, he said, I would sit down and sing blood songs. Oh, the blood of Jesus. And he can't sing, of Jesus. Until he felt strong again. Then he'd get up, go back over. Come out of her, you foul thing. I bind you in Jesus' name. Come out of her. And when he got tired, power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. And the press is all there. But this time it's a whole media frenzy. So the press is over here, the warden's over there, and all the other prisoners are trying to look through too. And he goes, I kept doing that all day long, and that's the point. I don't have time to teach while you sit down and sing songs. Well, I will tell it to you real fast. When you grow tired, do what makes you strong again right there at the point. Don't have to go home and find your little prayer closet and please. You're on the front line of a mission field. You're in a war zone. You can't go home. I need a week to go hunk up high somewhere. Just do it right there. Oh, the blood. And if you knew him, he couldn't sing, but he could sing with that grunt. Oh, the blood of Jesus. I don't know, but it worked. Whoosh, power come in. Come out. About the fifth time he did that, he goes, Lord, this thing's not moving. It goes around in her belly, but don't come out. Yeah. It has to come out. That's not move to a new kidney. They circulate, giving you a false sense of departure. He said, this thing's moving around, but it's not coming out. Why? He goes, well, this one's going to come out with prayer and fasting. Oh, I got one of those. Okay, he said, I want you to get familiar with it. So he tells the mayor and y'all still with me?
Yes, sir.
You enjoying my story?
Yes, sir.
I'm having fun.
Me too.
He tells I'll be back in 3 days, and I'll finish the job. The newspapers, headlines, the devil loses round 1 because he didn't die. They expect him to die. The newspapers are giving the punch by blow. Boom, 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 boom. I love Jesus. He does these fun stuff. Why don't you all become preachers and help me take the world for Jesus and get everybody free and have a good time? He finds a friend, a Filipino. I don't know if an American would have done it. Maybe. That's 1950, maybe. He finds a Filipino friend. Says, will you fast with me for 3 days to take care of this demon? And the Filipino goes, sure. What kind of friends do you have? I'm busy. My child's got to go to ballerina class. Got to take my son to football class. I'll come over for an hour about 9 o'clock. And the devil would have won and you'd have been dead. He found a good friend. 3 days later, he gets in his little suit, goes back to the prison, empowered through the power of fasting. It takes less than 2 hours. He walks in and that thing goes, wah! And bites her. He goes, I saw it. All over her body, the bite marks. He said she'd grab at it and the hairs of the demons would be in her hand. Now, that's some stories that they don't put in the books. He said, I had them in a little bag until they disintegrated about 4 or 5 days later. He said, it was a real spirit. He said, I came with a new authority. Come out of her. Yes. And it moved, and that thing came out of her, and she fell on the floor like dead. You know what? You know what he did? He goes over, gets on his knees, and slaps her face. Come back. I'm not done. So she kind of comes back from that deliverance. What was it he done for her? She hadn't gotten saved yet. You can't fall till you get saved. Sets her up, and there on the floor, he leads her into salvation in Christ Jesus. And the Holy Ghost fills her in the next moment without even talking about it. And then he starts singing, oh, the blood again. He says, I turned around, and all the press was on their knees. All the prisoners that I could see were on their knees. And they're all crying, weeping, trying to sing the song they did not know with me. He said the warden of the prison was on the phone and the mayor was going, is he dead? Did he make it? What is it? He goes, sir, I think he won. He says, bring him to my office now. And with a police escort, he goes. And now the mayor is not making him wait all day. He's at the front door looking for the preacher. He walks in and the mayor hugs him like it is his own son and daughter. And he says, what can I do for you? How can I in this city thank you? Sumrall says, always have an answer to that kind of question. He said, sir, you know this big square here that you have your political rallies in that stands 50, 80,000 people? I want it for 6 weeks free, twice a day. Wow. I want to tell the whole country that what Jesus did for Carlita, he'll do for them. He said, can I have that field? He said, it's yours for 6 weeks. He said, I have another request. I want you to get on the radio and tell everybody to come. I want you to tell the newspapers to tell everybody to come, and I want you to do it. He said, okay. Within 6 weeks, over 150,000 Filipinos had been born again.
Amen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
A revival broke out that is still rolling through the Philippines today. his church exploded to become the largest Protestant church in Asia of that time. He said, every government official loved me. He said, when I walked into a restaurant and the mayor was there, he would get up like a little boy and run over and hug me and greet me and say, is there anything else I can do for you? He said, I kept a list in my pocket.
Praise God.
He became the spiritual governor of a nation. Somehow, that demon in that girl was connected to the government of that nation. When he broke the back of that power, it loosed for the first time in their history a Protestant Pentecostal revival that is still rolling through the islands of the Filipinos today. At the height of that ministry and that revival, God tapped him on the shoulder. Go back to America. Why do you keep doing this to me, God? I get it going and get it working, and I finally get to enjoy it, and you make me move every time. He says, if you don't go back to America and teach the preachers how to cast out devils, they'll become the most possessed nation in the world in a matter of a few decades. I have need of you in your home country. And he said, I'll go. The little Filipinos who didn't like him in the beginning, when he announced that God had told him to go home, they did not just cry, they mourned so loud, the mourning was heard for weeks around the church. Their man of God was gone. He left it in good hands. The church still is a large church today. He didn't know how to make a transition well at that time. He comes back to America and builds 15 full-power TV stations, 2 radio stations, a shortwave station. Builds a church of 3,500 people. And he starts his last journey of ministry to take care of young preachers. Over 3,000 of us, he was our father. He's the only preacher I knew that needed a jet. The rest just enjoyed their jet. He would preach in 6 different cities a week for over 10 years of his life and go around the world preaching, even come into your country. That's where you come from. That's the heritage of faith that you come from. A man who, against his human want, let God's will become his will. Yes. Picked up his cross, God's command, and carried it for his lifetime. He died when all his duty was done and finished well. Can I do one more? Another man at the same time, or a different time, I say, Sumrall wasn't early 1900s, but in the mid-earlies, was dying of tuberculosis too. He had run away from home because he didn't want to be around his Pentecostal preachers, his pastors were preachers. He didn't want to be a preacher. He wanted to be an Oklahoma governor. He wanted to be in politics. He hated being poor and being made fun of. Plus, he was a stutterer. He ran away from home, and during a basketball tournament, he collapsed in the middle of the game, coughing up blood. The coach of the team picked him up and took him back to the bedroom that he ran away from. His name was Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts was dying of tuberculosis. He hated being home. He hated being a part of the Pentecostal world. But his mother being part Cherokee Indian, when she was pregnant with him, She knew how to pray for sick people and get them healed, and she was called upon in the middle part of Oklahoma to help sick people live. She'd been called to go pray for a sick lady, and she was walking across the fields and going under the barbed wire fence because they were too poor to have a car. She was going under the barbed wire fence, and she was praying a prayer because she was pregnant with a baby. She said, God, if you'll heal this person today that I'm praying for, I'll give you my baby. If you'll heal the one I pray for, I'll give you my baby. That baby was Oral Roberts. His daddy comes to the end of Oral's bed when he's dying and tells him, I'm not leaving the foot of this bed until you get right with God. You're not going to die without Jesus. Oral said, I was so angry I would have run away if I could, but all I could do was turn over and face the wall where I wouldn't see my father. And I fell asleep. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked at the end of the bed. I saw my dad's face as he was praying. And all of a sudden, this face of my father disappeared and the face of Christ appeared. And the face of Jesus melted my hard, angry heart. And he found Christ that night. Oral Roberts had just been born again. But he didn't know he had another complex. Why would God save me and let me die? Why would God save my soul but let a young man die with so much promise of life ahead of him? They didn't know what you and I know. They didn't know what you forgot in those days. His brother was driving down the road and saw a tent preacher. That's little Oral there on the left or your right. Notice how poor they are. They're country, barefoot, Pentecostal preachers. He would end up raising $1.5 billion for Christ before Oral Roberts would die. That little guy right there, the little small one, look at him. Dirt poor, we call it in America, would raise $1.5 billion. And that's where he came from. There's hope for you. Amen. And for me. All right. His brother goes to this tent meeting, and the guy's praying for sick people and they're getting healed. Wow, that's actually working. That afternoon, Oral's sister, Jewel, had come into the house, and Oral could not walk or talk. He was stuck in the bed and was still dying of tuberculosis. And the first 7 words of hope in the whole scenario, his sister said to him, Oral, God is going to heal you. No one had ever said that to him before. No one had given him hope or faith promises. They didn't know healing scripture like you and I know today. His sister, for some reason, somehow believed that the God that saved him somehow could heal him. He said, when my sister said that to me, I had hope for the first time. Maybe he would do something before I would die. Later that afternoon, his brother came and said, Oral, I was at a tent meeting last night, and this guy's praying for sick people, and they're getting healed. I borrowed my friend's car and put 35 cents worth of gas in it, and I think we should take you to the meeting because you might get healed there. Mom and Dad scooped up Oral Roberts in the bedclothes and the sheets, laid him across her lap in the back of the car while the brother drove a borrowed car to the tent meeting. He sat at the back and was the last one to be prayed for. He said, they brought me up. He said, it was the strangest prayer I'd ever heard. Because he didn't talk to Jesus. He talked to my disease. I never heard a prayer like that. He goes, he laid his hands on my chest and he commanded I command this disease that has attacked this young man's body to die and come out of him in Jesus' name. And Oral, for the very first time, breathed down into the depths of his lungs. He had just been healed. Oral Roberts could breathe. It took him about 2 weeks for full strength to come back in his body. I coughed, no more blood. I was never sick like that again. 2 weeks, he was the strength of a 17-year-old had come back into him. His daddy and mommy was so happy, and Oral was happy now too. Goes, God's a good God. He saved me and healed me. And he began to go with his daddy to these revival meetings in small country places in Oklahoma and Texas. And he didn't get up and give his testimony, and the pastors out there would see that this young man is special. He has a way about him. There's something of a God thing on him. And they began to invite him into little churches. And he'd get up and preach the best he could and tell his story. And his ministry began to grow. 3 years or so later, he thought, I need to get married. I can't be a good preacher without a good woman. So he found him a school teacher named Evelyn from Texas. Their first date after letter communication were 3 people, not 2. When you go on a date, it's usually you and the person you're dating. His mother went with him. I knew his mother as a little boy. My grandmother took care of Oral's mother in her later years. So we have Mama Roberts, as we called her, is about 4'11", 5 foot, short lady. She's part Native American, feisty little woman. I remember, he's in heaven so I can tell this. I would be there as a little boy at Mama Roberts' home, and Oral would come. And she'd get a chair and get on top of it and pull his ear. That's why his earlobes are probably bigger than they were supposed to be, because she'd pull him down so she could look in his face. And I don't remember what was said, but I remember this old woman getting in a chair and putting her finger, and Oral, and he'd just stand there. Yes, Mom. Yes, Mom. That's what I remember. Thank God for those kind of women that'll show up and tell you the truth whether you want it or not. That's Oral's mother. She goes, Oral, God's got a call on you, and you can't marry the wrong one. I'm going to make sure if it's right or wrong. So he drove from Oklahoma to Texas, and on that first date, there was Oral, Evelyn, and Mama Roberts. So true. If you knew him, you could see her. You're not going to hurt my boy. God has his hand on him. On the way back, she gave her Oral. You can marry her. She's the one. Do it fast. On Christmas Day, they got wed and were married for their entire life. There they are right there. Happily married for their entire life. One man, one woman. We can't stop here. God had told Oral Roberts while he was on that bed of sickness. And after that time he'd been healed, God came to him and spoke to him. Take my healing power to your generation. Who even saying it? I can feel it. Take my healing power to your generation. He was pastoring a small church with not much fruit. He was frustrated trying to earn his college degree that he never did finish. He said, this thing is not working. I'm poor again, like my parents, and a wife and some babies. God, what's the deal, in other words? And God tells him, get on your knees and read the Gospels and the book of Acts 3 times on your knees. He said, I did. And when I got done, I saw Christ in a new way. He went on a fast, and he put a fleece, which I don't encourage it, but God takes you where you're at. Now, Lord, I'm going to put a meeting together. And if it doesn't work, then I'm done. I'm going to go back to business. I'm going to rent a hall, and I want 1,000 people to show up. I want the bills to be paid, and at least one miracle that we all can see that was you. If not, I'm done with this ministry thing. He shows up, and there's a traffic jam. The sheriff and the police had come to this place where it seated 1,200 people. They put one ad in a newspaper. He shows up, and the policeman says to him, "Sir, there's no more parking place. You're going to have to go home. There's no more place." He goes, "I'm the preacher. I got to get in there." And made a path for him. It was filled to the capacity of 1,200 people. First fleece fulfilled. First night, couple pennies and nickels came in and wasn't enough to even think about paying it. Evelyn, his wife, "Oral, let me take up the offering. You don't do it right." He says, "Well, honey, if you want to do the offering, I'm more than happy to let you do it." She took up the offering, paid for the whole thing, and had $2 left over as profit. Now, back then, that's a big deal because all they knew was debt and poverty. Second fleece, done. Third one was a miracle. He said, "I'd preached the first night and prayed for some, not much, no healing. The last night," he said, "a man with a withered hand had come up." He said, "I grabbed a hold of that hand and asked God to heal that hand. Because I felt under my hand, that hand began to move, and it became normal." He said, when that crowd saw that hand, people ran from their balcony and flogged him, grabbed him, and began to touch me, touch me. Now, Oral Roberts' ministry had just been born. Now, God has a biblical covenant with all of us that's the same. Then God gives unto us a covenant of private and personal. It's a private, personal covenant. It don't work for anybody else. It works for you. Like for me, I have to tell stories like this for my whole life. Do you know what I'm doing today? Speaking naturally, I'm talking about dead preachers. And you flew me here to do that. Can you? That's one thing I do. I'm known for it. It's my covenant. I must be a declarer of all things that was, so all things that are to come can be stable and better. It's a part of my thing. We all have two hands. Hagen's hands both worked, his left and his right. Oral's right hand was the only one that worked in the spirit. The left hand had nothing. It's just a hand. That right hand had it all. Now, I don't know why God arranged it that way, but let me give you some advice. I've been in this home, and these preachers trying to be real deep and spiritual. Why doesn't the left hand work? Who cares? The right hand works. Go for the right hand. Sit on the right side. Be close to the right hand, so when it starts vibrating, you're the first to get hit. Don't be on the left side going, "I feel sorry for the left hand." Dummy. I don't know why people argue with how God put people together. Just accept it and get the blessing. In that right hand would sit the gift of healing and a power of deliverance. He would lay that hand on over 3 million people that we have record of. There's probably more than that. 3 million times he did this that we know of. It's probably closer to 6 or 7 in his life. You'll see in the pictures, you'll see that right hand come. The meetings begin to grow, and there was no auditorium in America big enough to hold the crowds that were coming to hear the young man that had been healed of TB preach and watch him pray for the sick and get them healed. They came by the thousands. The last night of this crusade, he'd pray for everybody. Before then, he'd only pray for so many a night to keep his strength going through the 2-week meeting or the 10-day meeting. But the last night, he would take off his coat, in other words, say, I'm ready to pray for everybody. The newspapers of America would record sometimes in some cities, the prayer line would be 2 to 3 miles long from that gospel tent, waiting for the man with the gift in the right hand to touch them and release healing and delivering power into them. They came from the Methodists, the Baptists, the Catholic. They came and got saved. The young man who didn't want to be a preacher, now America was listening to. In the 1950s, there was a new invention called the television. And America was buying televisions by the thousands. And Oral Roberts wants to be on TV. Now the Pentecostals, see the cameras? The Pentecostals thought TV was the television, not the television, and wanted nothing to do with TV. Nobody in the Christian place where Oral was understood that thing right there. They did not understand cameras and lights. Pentecostals were all waiting for the rapture to get their new home in heaven, living in the shack on the earth. That's why they always sang heaven songs and rapture songs, because they didn't know how to live today and tomorrow. The only hope they had was that when we all get to heaven, what a day that'll be. I fly away, oh glory. Cross Beulah land, all those boring dead songs. I'm not dying until it's time, because I don't die easy. And neither should you. I need to hurry, but this is Oral. You got to do Oral right. He hires a young man, about 24. Somebody 24 years old? Who's the 24-year-old guy here? Somebody here 24 years old? Raise your hand. Come here. 24-year-old, come here. Come hither. I'm not going to hurt you. 24 years old, right? You're 24. He hires a guy this age. Has no knowledge of TV. He's just loves Oral, loves Jesus, will do anything for Oral and Jesus. Oral hires him and says, your job is to get me on TV. He got the guys, he'd got the cameras in there now. He was filming it, but now they didn't want a faith healer on TV. They liked Billy Graham, and Billy Graham and Oral Roberts were good friends their whole life, by the way. So this 24-year-old guy liked nice cars. You like nice cars? He liked Rolls Royce cars. 20-year-old good taste. And so that weekend, there was a convention in Tulsa of Rolls Royce cars with the latest one on display. So this young man, 20 years old, was so excited not for church that day, but for church to get over. So he could go down to the car show and see all those cars and the new one. He had no money, though. So the show was ending, and there sat only 2 people left in the whole showroom. A man named Lonnie Rex, 24 years old, and an old guy like me, a little bit older than me. We're standing there looking at the new Rolls Royce. And the old guy says to the young guy, you like these cars? Yeah. He goes, I own the last model. I think I'm going to buy this one. What do you think? You think it's worth buying a new car? I got last year's model, and my wife, I thought I'd buy her this one. He goes, oh, please do. She'd love it. And they talked as they walked out of the showroom. He goes, young man, what kind of job do you have? He goes, I work for Evangelist Roberts. And that guy took his hand. Do you know who I am? And the young guy goes, no, just a guy that likes Rolls Royce cars like I do. You don't know who I am? No. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm the head of all the TV stations in America. The head of the FCC, we call it today. I'm the chairman, the president of that group. And your boss has been trying to get a hold of me, and he didn't send you out here to talk to me. Have you been spying, trying to find out where I'm at? That's what he thought. God knows how to direct the steps of his kids. He said, since you brought it up, let's talk about, the young man says to the old guy, can we get Oral's program on the television stations of America? He goes, we just don't know if the healings are real or not. He could be a fake. The young man said, I swear to God and to everyone, Oral is not a fake. He said, why don't you send a judge? There's a judge over there. Come here, judge. Judge lady, come. You're the judge. You're the real one too, by the way. Hope this is okay to do this to you. Hope you don't get mad and make it some kind of law against me. He says, we'll get a judge, an honorable judge, that during the tent meeting when they're being filmed, we'll have the judge sit there and watch everything that Oral does and sign off on a piece of paper that what you saw as an honorable judge, that man is real. No fake. No. So across America, Oral had to find judges like you that would come in and sit where they could see everything. And they signed off, every one of them, that there was no wrongdoing in the Oral Roberts TV ministry. Thank you. Amen. The judges. In less than 2 years, Oral goes from 3 to 4 TV stations to over 500 stations in America. Because of this guy. Being directed by the Lord and having the boldness to speak to his elders in the right tone, in the right way, but with force of conviction. A 24-year-old man put Oral Roberts on the map in America. Thank you, sir. I'll go do the same thing for somebody else, all right? All of a sudden, America was having dinner, watching TV, and the young man would come on. God bless him. He can't find his chair. I'm trying to close, third closing. All of a sudden, America at breakfast and at dinner, from Miami to New York to LA, LA to Dallas to Chicago, over 500 stations when there was only 2 networks out there. Saw a man named Oral Roberts come on their screen going, God is a good God and the devil is a bad devil. And they dropped their fork and their spoon and they stopped drinking their coffee. Who is this man? And to prove to you that my God that I serve is a good God, and he will defeat every devil that's a bad devil. I want to show you his healing power. And America begin to see the hand of Christ through his earthly servant oil heal the sick like Christ did at Galilee. The cripples walked, the blind saw, the deaf heard, the mute spoke, and miracles were happening across America. The 10 crusades came to an end. And God said, build me a university. Oral had not even finished his university education himself. How can a non-college degreed person build a university? Here's how he did it. Lord, interpret it back to me. And God, through the Spirit, would interpret back to Oral Roberts what he prayed in tongues. And it was by that means of prayer and fellowship and communion, he found out how to build a accredited university built on the authority of God's word and the power of the Spirit to raise up young men and women to go where the gospel is small and make it big in those territories. For the first time in Pentecostal history, we ignorant Pentecostals could go to a school, and here was their first slogan: come to our school, get your learning while keeping your burning. Because the Pentecostals wouldn't send their kids to school, because they'd go to these heathen schools, and they'd come back not believing anything in the Bible that the pastor, the Sunday school teacher, or the parents had told them. And they quit sending them, and they also believed something was not quite true. If you get educated, you'll lose your anointing. That's how simple people viewed what was happening to their children and grandchildren. But Oral was their hero. Oral Roberts was their Moses that had brought them from the wrong side of the tracks, across the tracks to the right side of town. Their hero that had that healing gift said, God told me to build a quality university where your son and your daughter can come and learn to be a businessman, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a nurse, and go into every man's world with their knowledge and with the power of the Holy Spirit. And those little Pentecostals, what little money they had, they gave it to Brother Roberts. And he built that university that still exists today to educate the total man, the spirit, soul, and body. He did it, the first of his kind. Remember where he came from? He would preach slogans that moved the church to higher heights. God is a good God. The devil is a bad devil. A point of contact. When I touch you, release your faith to God that God might respond and heal you and help you. When you have a need, plant a seed. These were the elementary utterances that now we of another generation elegantly stand upon and preach for hours on 3 to 4 words that Oral had pioneered into the foundation of our people. He put paramedicine together before he died. The most controversial thing he did in his life. He was building a 60-story building in the middle. And on the left was a 20-story. And on the right was 30. And had healing waters and 2 hands that fit out front. One of the doctor and one of the praying preacher together with the healing waters. It cost him $200 million to build it. And he needed the last $1.6 million. Now, after you've raised $200 million, you think 1.6 is not that much, but Everybody he knew had given everything they had. I mean, we gave and we gave. We stopped our projects to get that project done. There were churches in my country who quit giving to their building projects and said, let's give to Oral to get this thing done that's of God. May I say this? Thank you for being willing to put yours second for a national statement. He's on TV. And a man in Sarasota, where I used to live, owned a dog racing track, like horse racing. He raced dogs, greyhounds. He was in his house drinking his margarita or whatever it was, watching Oral Roberts. For some reason, he had it on that channel. And Oral goes, I need $1.6 million to finish this. I need help. I know you've all given. Let's believe with me. If you can't give anymore, just believe with me. Let your faith and my faith come together and go to God for this last part of the miracle. He was sitting in his house, drinking his beer or whatever it was. Not saved. He's a gambler. He's like a Las Vegas guy. He goes, interesting. And in that show that was live, his wife, Evelyn Roberts, is sitting there, and the drunk guy's watching it, or the drinking guy's watching it. And Evelyn goes, Oral, that's not right. On live TV, she corrects her husband. Oral, if you knew Mother Roberts, or her wife, Evelyn Roberts, she was very nice and polite and very well-mannered, but she was they had a great marriage, I'll say it that way. Oral, that's not right, that's not right, that's not the right figure. It's 1.3, not 1.6. That's on live TV, across America at that time. She corrects the great healing Oral on live TV while the guy is watching it. And he goes, if that man will let his wife correct him on national TV, he must be a good guy. Because I don't know any other guy that allow that. He said, I'll give him the money. He picks up the phone. Now, what? Yeah, you should clap on that. That's a good place to clap. He picks up the phone to call the number on the screen, prayer number and all that, and tells the prayer lady, and answers, Oral Roberts Prayer Ministry, I want to give that guy the 1.3 million. She hangs up on him. I love these stories. It's better than a movie. It's just crazy how this stuff. For some reason, he calls back. You know how hard that is an extreme change. He calls back and gets, praise God, somebody else. She goes, okay, and then goes through all the phone systems to get to the proper people. Oral Roberts got his 1.3 million from a sinner drinking alcohol that owned a bunch of dogs. Wonderful. And he'll do that for you. All right. I knew Brother Roberts all my life. My name is Roberts because he helped name me when I was born. My parents were charter class students of the university in 65. I was born in 66. That's Brother Roberts at my church. And so I grew up running through his house in my diaper and nappy, whatever you call them over here. And I had a relationship with him, I think because of that, to ask uncomfortable questions. So let me tell you a couple and then I will close, because the bishop's coming on next, I think. Brother Roberts, are you rich? Because he was known as the big money prosperity guy. Do you have secret bank accounts in Europe? Because I lived in Tulsa. I heard it all. I should tell you the jokes that Oral liked about himself. He laughed. He goes, when I die, I'll have the last laugh. They think I took all those people's money and ran off with it. He says, my money can be seen where it's at. It sits out there in that university. And it sits in the hearts of millions of people that myself and my partners put me on television and crusades around the world. They don't get that money is what helped me get the gospel to their hearts. Yes. When he died, he owned his car, his clothes, and a small condo in Newport Beach, California. All the other things that were rightfully his, he had willed and put it all toward the ministry. He did not die broke, but he did not die what you call a rich man. He wanted to make sure that people knew that he did right by the money, even in his private life. Orrin Evan had come to my church, and he was preaching. And we went to, like you do here, we fixed a big meal. And I had both of them together, and I was in front of them. And I thought, this is the day of asking Evelyn questions about Oral, while he's sitting there, so I can watch his reaction to her response. So I said, Mrs. Roberts, we called her Mama by this time, Mama Roberts. I said, what's it like living with Oral Roberts? That's a good question, especially when he's sitting there. And she put down her fork and knife and starts thinking of what to say. And she goes a little bit longer than Oral's comfort would permit him to stay quiet. He goes, honey. She goes, give me a minute. She looks at me and she goes, stressful. And Oral goes, she goes, no, Oral, watch this, so cute. Oral, you are the best preacher I've ever heard in my life. You are the best preacher, I think, in the world. And I love hearing you preach more than anybody else. You are the best. But you have to admit, living with you is stressful. I get up some days to go to the grocery store and helicopters follow me to the grocery store. I go to pick up your church at the dry cleaners and the newspaper people are following me. And she says, I can handle that, but what gets me is when you wake up, I never know what we're going to do next. I married a preacher who became a television personality. I married a man that I thought would be a nice pastor, and he builds a university. I wake up, I never know what you're going to do next, and here we go. And she goes, and she looked at me, she goes, and none of his projects are cheap. They all cost millions that we never have. And Oral goes, but honey, we always get it. She goes, I know we got to give all of our money away. Evelyn dies first. Oral dies a little while later. He falls and hurts his tailbone, backbone. He's an older man. When you're old, you need someone to kind of walk with you. If you don't have the strength, that's not embarrassing. It's just the kindness. Peter even had that. They take him to the hospital, as I'm told the story. And his children, the two that are left alive, come to their daddy's room. And they come off the elevator, the lift, and they hear noise on the hospital floor. They're just supposed to, shh, supposed to be quiet in the hospital. Shh, that's the sound of death. Shh, 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 shh. Die quietly. And they was kind of odd, you know. And they got closer to Oral's room, and it was him making all the noise. And the doctors told the children, we didn't want to give him a shot to knock him out, but he won't quiet down. Can you help us with this? He goes in, Richard, and says, Daddy, shh, No! What he was doing, he was singing all the old tent songs. Where the healing waters flow, I will surely be. All the old tent songs at the top of his lungs. He says, shh, 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 shh. No. Sing with me. Sing with me. So they all start singing tent songs. And the kids didn't get it right. They had to start all over from the top. Now you mess it up, let's sing it again. They'd sing those songs. And Oral said to him, I'm going home soon. No, Dad, you're going to be in the hospital for a little bit longer than what you think. He goes, no, I'm a-leaving. I'm done. And he sang the songs of his youth at the time of his transition. Leaving this world, spent fulfilling the call. Take my healing power to your generation. It's how you end that counts the most. I miss Brother Roberts' praying. I'm trying to close. I'm so sorry. I would go to his house and never let him leave. I would never leave without his prayer. It's different than Lester. Be blessed. Oral would pray something like this. I come to the God that I have served since my youth. I ask the God that I gave my heart to anoint me one more time, that I might touch these that are here with more than a hand, but the hand of my Savior, who when he walked through Galilee, he healed the leper. He raised the dead. He brought health to them that are around him. I ask for that same power of Jesus that came upon me, to come upon me again. The God that scooped out the seas and the mountains, who put the stars in their firmament of power. Give me, and somewhere in the midst of that kind of prayer, that hand would come alive. And he'd look at you and let it whack on the top of your head or on your chest. Kaboom! You felt God and Oral. Even as an older man, you could still feel it. It's true. I had a handprint a few times on my chest when I left his house. And I wanted to stay for a lifetime imprint, but it kind of faded after a while. He'd pray like that and let that hand hit you. So wonderful. So wonderful. Don't argue how the gift works. Just enjoy it. Yes. And Father, I thank you today that I've obeyed you according to my covenant to tell this great congregation of people, of leaders and future leaders, to the best of my ability, the story of these two great men of faith. And I pray for you this afternoon that the God that I serve will hear my voice and that he will move and touch you in the most innermost part of your thinking and your feeling. That God will reach down into your soul and your spirit and heal you from the inside out. May every wound, every pain, every disappointment that has found a living inside of you, may it be removed today. May the God of heaven deliver you from the pains of human sorrow. I pray for you today that your mind will be stable. Your emotions shall be joyful and full of proper color. I pray for you today that God will heal your body. Pray sickness and disease come out of you. Be healed in the name of Jesus. I pray that God will give you money. I pray today that the God that we serve, that is the owner of all the cattle and the silver and the gold and the modern wealth, that he will prosper you. That our God will cause your tithe to work, your seeds to work, and that into your hands shall come the harvest that is rightfully yours. May you have money to care for your family and fulfill your destiny in this nation and this great continent of Africa. I pray for you that are single, that you shall marry the right person. May in you be the ability to walk from the wrong into the hand and the arm of the right one. I pray that God will give you that person who will become one with you and God, that you will be able to do that which you're called to do and have no jealousy or contrariness inside the covenant that you hold. I pray for you today that God will help your children and your grandbabies, that they, yes, I'll say, I pray that the wrong people stay out of their lives. I pray that the wrong people get out of your lives. And may the God who orders our steps send the right people into your life, in your children's lives, and your grandbabies' lives. I pray for a social miracle for you. And I leave my blessing upon this house. Grow and increase in number, in stature, and in wealth, that you may build more of the great sanctuaries of our God. I pray that for you. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Thank you, and God bless you.